Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the case known as the Nude in the Nettles. It is a Jane Doe case. I don't do many of these. Well, I do a lot of suggestions, so if you guys ask me to do them, which this is, it was a suggestion by CD, so thank you for that. I appreciate any, obviously, that you make to me. But, you know, generally it's not something that I cover too much on my channel, not by lack of wanting to. I think these cases are so important to try and get the word out, to try and identify these people, because this woman has family out there somewhere, you know, distant relatives at this point, who knows, but somebody must be related to her. Somebody out there must know who she is, and that's why I find them so important, to get the word out, you know, and spread everything to try and find out who this person is. She is English, so she's an English Jane Doe. And there's not actually super lot of English Jane Does. Most of them are like American. There's a lot of Jane Does in America. Let's dive right in. On the 20th of August in 1981, the Yorkshire police received a phone call early in the morning, about 8 AM, from an unknown caller, a male. He basically said that in this certain area they would find a decomposing body of a woman amongst the willow herbs. And he was on the phone for less than a minute. He was said to be very well spoken, but when asked about who he was and if he could give his identity, he basically said that he couldn't, as a part of like security. And then not long after that, he did hang up when they started sort of questioning who this man was. So the constable goes down and begins looking for this body. And initially, he couldn't find this body because, well, he actually mistook parts of her body, because at this point she was skeletal, parts of her body to be like these long sort of tree branches or something like that. I don't know whether, maybe he thought he was looking for a fully formed body without decomposition, not skeletal remains, who knows at that point. But she was actually like nestled in and tangled up with the willows and the nettles. They bring the people in, having found this body. They cut down the tall pink flowers and the nettles that she is surrounded by, and they begin the investigation into trying to find out who this woman was. She didn't have any ID on her. I believe that she didn't have any clothing or anything like that. And the area that she was in, I guess this made people believe that the person that called it in, it may have been one of the main suspects, whoever that person was, because the area she was in was very like secluded. She was very well hidden. It's not somewhere that you would just sort of walk through generally and come across her remains. So it was as if somebody who knew that she was there was like reporting it to the police finally. They carefully like examined her body, and part of her skull still had like brown hairs fused to it, so they assumed that that was her natural hair color. They later found a cut toenail which was painted, I believe it was painted pink, and from the position that her body had been like dumped in, they assumed that whoever had done this to her was in like a hurry. You know, they just sort of chucked the body there to try and hide it and just get out of there. The thing was, though, there was no proof that anything foul play had been committed here. There was, you know, what's to say that she didn't just collapse there and die? People do that. People have heart attacks. People have sort of aneurysms or anything all of the time out of the blue, and they just sadly and devastatingly do just sort of drop dead. So what, who's to say that that hadn't happened to her? Well, obviously they're going to look into it anyway, and well, I don't believe she was close, so that could be an inkling as to her being murdered, you know. The problem was that she was very badly decomposed. They didn't find any nicks to her bones to suggest like a penetrative injury, like a knife wound or something like that, or a bullet wound. Nothing like that. And obviously the soft tissue all around her neck had gone, so they couldn't rule in or rule out strangulation. There was just no sign of blunt force trauma or anything like that on her skull. So obviously it was just going to be a very difficult case from the off. They did find something though. They find her body to actually be laid on this lid of a yogurt pot or something like that, which gave an estimate, what the police believed, into her time of death and how long she'd actually been there. They used that to, and like between the use by date and the sell by date, whatever it is, to estimate that they thought that she had been lied there for 2 years. And then, with all this information coming out, a jockey actually did come forward to say that he was exercising horses in that area 2 years prior. And this kind of confirmed their timeline, I guess, because he, like, smelled this foul-smelling odour around that area at the time. I mean, he didn't really think too much of it. Sometimes you just get horrible smells that come forward. It could have been a rotten animal for all he knew. But they figured that that was probably her body decomposing. So it kind of confirmed their timeline, I guess. There was, where her body was located as well, was like this country lane, and it was pretty heavily gone down by cars and things. So, you know, it was very strange how nobody had seen anything. It was a popular spot for couples who were dating to spend some time together. It was just used a lot, basically. And the fact that she hadn't been found until 2 years later was pretty strange, but, you know, not out of the ordinary because it happened. From the analysis that they did, they found out that she was about 5'2", that she was estimated to be around 40 years old. She was a mother of 2 or 3 children, and the investigators believe that she was potentially married at some point. And although there was no evidence to say that this was a criminal act, like I said, she was found naked, no jewelry, no nothing. So that leads you to believe in itself that, you know, there's something not right about it. She had a fused spine, which would mean that she would suffer with back problems. She also had a break to one of her ankles, but I believe that was a bit older. She, when looking at her dental record, she had a lot of false teeth. I believe 6 of them were her real teeth, so she had like a lot of dentures, and they were stained, and it was suggested that she was potentially a heavy smoker stroke drinker, or both, and that she potentially didn't really take great care of her like dental hygiene. Now, they also found something to do with fluoride. They found a high amount of fluoride in her bones, and they said that that kind of put an estimate that until the age of 7, she lived in an area that had a lot of fluoride in the water. But I also read something that basically sort of counteracted that by saying that there was a lot of areas with just fluoride in them. I don't really know the ins and outs of fluoride. I don't know what it is, but not necessarily that it was in the water, but that it was just in an area. So they said potentially she could have lived at these 2 areas that had high amounts of fluoride in their water, but then I read an article that said that it might not have even been in the water. So, you know, that kind of throws that out the window anyway. And I mean, they weren't basing anything major off that anyway, because just because those 2 areas were high in fluoride doesn't mean that that's where she came from or that's where she lived at one point. She could have come from somewhere totally different. Police discovered that there were 3 sets of tracks like around the body, which led them to believe that those tracks were actually made by somebody who was looking for her body. So was this potentially the person that rang in, the person that killed her 2 years ago, and that they were making sure that her body was still there before they rang it in? Who knows? The police work began. They pleaded with the public to try and find out who, if anyone, knew this woman. A school group made a mold of what it is believed that her face may have looked like, and you know, they put that out across to the nation. They just really hoped that somebody would know her and recognize her. Somebody would be able to finally identify this Jane Doe. They contacted children's homes in the hope that, you know, maybe their mother had visited them a lot and then suddenly vanished. They asked employers to check their records if they had somebody sort of fit in her description around that time that just simply vanished as well. They just tried everything they could, and they did generate a lot of interest from that. Families and things did come forward saying that they thought it was this person or this person that they were related to, but sadly none of their DNA or anything matched, so she was not part of their family. There was also some focus on a sort of female prisoner who was called Geraldine, who escaped from prison, and you know, they assumed that maybe this could be her, but Geraldine actually came forward to say that she was still alive. You know, it wasn't her. She even sent through 2 fingerprints to prove that she was still alive. So I don't know what happened to her, whether they caught her after that or not, but it wasn't her. The police do strongly believe that Jane Doe was murdered and dumped in the spot where she was found 2 years later. they don't believe that she was just wandering around and, you know, had lost her life due to some illness or something like that. Heart attack, aneurysm, anything really. And again, there's only one real suspect in the case, which is the man that called it in. And I mean, her body was very well hidden. Just the weeds were really high. It's not like you're just gonna... And the person that was actually looking for her, knowing that he was looking for remains, mistook her for a branch or something like that. So, do you know what I mean? That just goes to show that anybody just walking, passing by, probably wouldn't, unless they saw like a human skull, which he was, like I said again, he was looking for the remains and he couldn't find them for ages. But why would you have ever assumed that a body was there? So it's really believed that the person that rang it in is potentially the person that did it. And this person remains unidentified. They never came forward to say who they were. But I mean, that's all we know. This woman was likely killed 42 years ago. She was discovered like around 40 years ago now, and she still remains a Jane Doe. She still remains unidentified. We have no idea who she is. And obviously, everyone asks that if you know anything or you believe that she is your family member, please do contact like the Yorkshire police and we can finally get this woman identified. And I guess all we can hope for in this case really is to finally get her identity. Maybe that could be made possible through all these genealogy databases that are doing amazing work with solving these unsolved cases, or these Jane Does or John Does, and the amazing work that they do through that maybe one day in the future one of her relatives will put in their DNA into the database, and maybe it will pop up that they are related and they will finally find out who this woman is. There's also been a lot of mention with regards to the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, with regards to that case, because he was active around the time that this woman was murdered, but didn't really fit his MO. And I believe that they tried to like interview him with regards to it, but I don't think that they were allowed to, or something like that. I might be wrong with that. I'm sorry if I am. Jane Doe was finally laid to rest in 2011, and she was put in a coffin which was like inscribed unknown, died August 28th, 1981. And basically she was buried with a few police officers that were probably, you know, close to the case or found her body or whatnot. They were bearing witness to her burial, which is just so sad. She remains in that coffin. We have her DNA and things. Hopefully the sequencing will one day provide her identity. But just for a family out there that may be wondering what happened to her and they have no idea, it's just really heartbreaking that we literally have this person who we don't know who she is, and her family's out there somewhere not knowing what happened to her. We need the two to meet, okay? We need them to meet. We need the family that's wondering, maybe put their DNA into the genome database, and then wow, we get a match and finally find out who this woman is. It happened not long ago with what was the case? The Babes in the Woods from Vancouver. They were finally identified after like 70 years, which is absolutely crazy and amazing. We got the Golden State Killer through it. You know, he got away with it for years and he was finally caught. Just, it does amazing things, this technology, and I really truly hope that one day it finally gives the name to this Jane Doe, the Nude and the Nettles. But yeah, that is all I have today on her case. And yeah, if you guys have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. And until next time, bye!